Welcome into College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, week number 7 with our leadoff hitter getting us going here at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter, the Sit Down Podcast. He's got a lot going on, getting ready for college basketball as well. Jeff, welcome on in, buddy. How you feeling?
Good. Thank you for having me as always, Drew.
Happy to have you, buddy, as we got some Wednesday football here in Conference USA, guys. We get New Mexico State and Jacksonville State leading us off here, 4:30 p.m. Pacific from Jacksonville, Alabama, minus 21 in the hook. That is the Gamecocks as the home favorite, hosting New Mexico State here, Jeff, 59.5 being the total. Jacksonville State's been bought up, almost 2 full points here. Rich Rod at the helm, looking to run it up. Are you liking anything in Jacksonville, Alabama tonight?
I don't think I'm necessarily looking at anything. That said, I can always talk about every game. I think Jacksonville State, when you look into their numbers, you'll see they're 2-3. They've given up 34 points a game. That said, they've played some significantly better offenses than the one they're going to play tonight. I think when you look at Jacksonville State, what they did last time out against Kennesaw is kind of a good indication of what's going to happen here. This is not a good New Mexico State defense. This is a far cry from the team from last year. Diego Pavia is long gone. He's now winning games at Vanderbilt. This is a New Mexico State team, 116th in points per game, not a good defensive group. So I kind of feel like a lot of the times in these games, I'm going to look at the one entity that I trust. And the truth of the matter is Jacksonville State's a good offense. They're always a good rushing offense. This is a New Mexico State team that can't stop the run. They, again, scored 63 points last time out. So to me, I'd probably look towards a team total here. I think it's around 40. In fact, I think it's under 40. Look, again, Jacksonville State's played Coastal Carolina, who's a good team. Louisville is a really good team. Eastern Michigan, who is actually a good defense. They scored 34 in that game. And then when you look at the two lesser games, Southern Miss and Kennesaw, they scored 44 and 63. So I would probably look towards just placing a bet on their offense and not worrying much about getting stops. I like the team total over here.
I agree with the breakdown there, Jeff. Yeah, you bring up like strength of opponent when it has dropped down, which I would put New Mexico State in that category. They've really ran it up. I mean, they've cashed their last 2 tickets by more than 50 against the spread points, that being against Kennesaw State and Southern Miss. And Rich Rod, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Real good. This is also one other thing. This is also a really good Jacksonville State touchdown percentage team. When you are playing team totals, if you're not looking at touchdown percentage in the red zone, you will lose, right? You can't get big. It's very simple. If you kick a lot of field goals and don't capitalize in the red zone or commit a lot of penalties, and you're betting on teams to score a lot of points, you're going to lose. I mean, when you look at high touchdown percentages, there's a very strong indication of all the teams. They're all really good offenses and they score a lot, Drew. Army, Texas, Navy, Ohio State, Boise State, Penn State, Indiana, Alabama, San Jose's been a good offensive team. All those teams are really high from a touchdown percentage standpoint. Would it surprise you, Drew, to learn that teams that don't score a lot of points are bad in the red zone? Well, no. When you look into those teams, Miami of Ohio has the worst touchdown percentage in America, Drew. They have 4 touchdowns. Their average, I think, believably are the worst offense scoring wise in the country. So you have to look at that if you're betting overs, team total overs, high spread numbers.
All great points at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter. We got the 3-pack on Thursday, 3-pack on Friday, and then we're going to hit the top of the Saturday card here, guys, wherever you're downloading your podcasts at. Every game on the board. We're also simulcasting this one on Twitter and YouTube. Every game on the board. All right, first game up here for Thursday, October 10th, 107-108. We are talking Coastal Carolina and James Madison. This one a 7:30 Eastern start time here. So you just brought up the Chanticleers here, Jeff. Now they're catching 9 and a hook on the road, 61 being the total.
Yeah, I'm still trying to look at the JMU game and figure out how they lost. I don't really understand it. Like when you look at the box score, they outgained UL Monroe 399 at 257. They had 9 more first downs. They only had 1 turnover. UL Monroe had 2, and they still lost. Like I don't understand it. I mean, there's no outliers here. JMU was up 10-0. I got to look more into the actual kind of highlights and that sort of thing, but it was a weird loss. That said, it was their first loss. Obviously, it happened. You got to move on now. There's still a lot of season to play for JMU. You're probably not going to get into that playoff now, but you got to keep moving forward. And this has been an offense that's been really good. We know they can both run the ball and pass the ball. This is a Coastal Carolina group that struggled defensively. A lot of that's come on the ground. They're 116th in rushing defense, just not very good. I feel like JMU bounces back here. That said, Drew, this is around where I put the number. JMU back at home. I think we kind of just take out an outlier game in the one we just saw and kind of just believe that JMU is probably a lot more to the team we saw before that loss as opposed to the one here. So I would probably lean on laying it. That said, I think the over makes a lot of sense here. The one unit I don't necessarily trust is JMU's defense as well. I felt like this was first to 30 wins. I could see this, 38-28, something like that. It was a tough game for me. I didn't have much on it.
Jeff, we have seen a little push to the over from 60 to 59.5 to 61.5. And you bring up JMU losing. How about ULM, the Warhawks, 4-1 out the gate, both straight up and against the spread? So that has something to do with it.
I guess, again, like I've said before with them, like they're just going to run the ball. Like that's all they do. But they only had 110 rushing yards. So like they had 4.3 yards of play. I mean, again, though, you look at JMU, 11 penalties. I mean, you just can't win doing that. And Drew, I want to discuss how important that is. Okay. Washington, when they don't penalize themselves, they are actually quite a good offense and a damn good defense. You look at last week, they finally won a game against a good opponent in Michigan. They had 2 penalties. You look at the game they lost against Rutgers, I think they had 10 penalties. You can't win with some of the stuff I'm talking about here. Bad penalties, constant penalties, not scoring touchdowns. All that stuff adds up. Again, I got to look more at the highlights in this game, but when you go to this game, I felt like both these offenses could probably move the ball.
All right, Jeff, go to the middle game here on Thursday. We got MTSU, that's Middle Tennessee State, the Blue Raiders at Louisiana Tech. We are seeing Louisiana Tech -4.5. There's a -5 out there as the home favorite. Total pretty much 49 flat across the board. MTSU on the road in Ruston, Louisiana. Next game up, Jeff.
Well, yeah, whenever Middle Tennessee plays, you look at the opponent they're playing and you say, okay, can they throw the football? Because Middle Tennessee has, I believe, statistically the worst pass defense as far as yardage in the country. They have just gotten completely shredded. That said, and there's a big caveat here, they did play a lot of really good opponents, particularly good passing offenses. Basically, Ole Miss, West Kentucky, Duke, Memphis, all significantly better offenses than Louisiana Tech. That said, this is a pretty good Louisiana Tech offense. They've actually been a pretty good defensive team, too, only giving up 21 points a game this season. I think Middle Tennessee, Drew, just bad. This number's been bet up from 3.5 to 4.5. So I don't know that you were ever going to get a 3 here. You kind of just have to assume that Middle Tennessee gets it by a touchdown or more. I think they're the better team. I'd probably lean on them here. I had this number kind of in that no zone at like 5 or 6, where I don't really know where to put the number. Middle Tennessee, sadly, is a dreaded bad defensive team and not a good offensive team. That said, they have played a lot of good opponents. Then again, though, they played Tennessee Tech and won by 7. So I just think they're bad. I would lay it with La Tech here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with your breakdown, Jeff. I liked an angle in this one in terms of Derek Mason, their head coach. He's a former defensive coordinator at kind of the top programs in college football, talking about Middle Tennessee State here, and they're off of a bye. So I'd look for that defense to be improved. And there was also a change on Louisiana Tech, guys, and that being Sonny Cumbie, their head coach, was calling the plays, and he actually relinquished that duty to the offensive line coach. And usually when I see that with play calling, and now the offensive line coach is going to be calling plays, I would think more running the football, therefore running the clock. I kind of like the under here, Jeff. Not sure if you have anything on that in closing.
Yeah, I think that would be the way I'd lean. I kind of had it, I think La Tech maybe get to 24. I thought it was like a 24-17 type of game, 24 or 27-21. I could see something like that. I think around 50, it would definitely be an under. I think that's a great shot on Middle Tennessee's, again, they played a lot of good opponents, right? That said, I think Louisiana Tech's a little bit better. It's a bad game, two teams that aren't going anywhere fast. So, I would kind of side with you a bit on the under as well.
Okay, we got the nightcap here on Thursday, October 10th, as we are moving down the list here, guys, in rotation order. 111, 112, 8 o'clock Eastern. It's UTEP and Western Kentucky. Hilltoppers, near 3-touchdown favorites, minus 19 in the hook, 57.5 being the total, as we go from El Paso to Bowling Green, Kentucky here for UTEP and Western Kentucky, Jeff.
Yeah, I watched a little UTEP Sam Houston last week. This UTEP team is dreadful on offense. I mean, they are really bad. They can't score touchdowns, Drew. They have, I think, 10 touchdowns on the season in 5 games. Just not good enough. I will say, I mean, I thought they played pretty honorably last year against West Kentucky. That said, West Kentucky, I believe, are off a bye, if I'm correct here. They're off a bye. Last played against Boston College. This West Kentucky team's played a pretty good schedule so far. Outside of the Middle Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, they played BC, Toledo, and Alabama, all solid opponents. West Kentucky's weird, though, because for a while they had, I believe, TJ Finley starting. Caden Veltkamp's now the starter. I'm curious after a bye who they go back to. I think both quarterbacks are very capable. This is a UTEP team I just don't trust to ever score. I mean, I kind of always figure them around, maybe I'm being generous here, 14. I kind of had West Kentucky in the 30s in this game. UTEP just can't seem to keep up a lot of the time. They're a pretty bad team, and you have to wonder, have they just kind of given up at this point? I mean, they're 0-5. They'd have to win out, I believe, to get to a bowl. I guess there'll be some effort, but you have to wonder in the second half if they kind of just disappear. Sam Houston took control quickly of that game in the third quarter and kind of never looked back. And Sam Houston's not on the level of West Kentucky. I think anything under 3 touchdowns, I'd be interested in laying. I noticed that this game was 50-50 bets, but 75% of the actual money being bet early this week is on the Hilltoppers, which indicates sharp money is on the favorite here.
Great point there, Jeff, as we'll move to the Friday slate here, guys. October 11th. Looks like 113, 114 Memphis, South Florida is canceled and moved to Saturday. But if you have anything on that, Jeff, feel free to throw it out. But I'll tee up Northwestern and Maryland up next. The Terps, minus 11 at home, 45.5 being the total.
Yeah, so last week, one of my premium plays, Drew, was Indiana, minus 13.5. They got the job done against Northwestern. Wasn't easy, but they got it done. And I watched a lot of the game, and what I learned is that Northwestern's better now with Jack Lausch at quarterback. They had a guy called Mike Wright who was their quarterback, wasn't playing real well. Jack Lausch is a big kind of limber kid, 6'2", 6'3", has the ability to fight off tackles, kind of a strong kid, throws the ball pretty well. I think he's an upgrade at quarterback. And look, to be honest, I thought they were pretty good last week. 336 total yards, 5.5 yards of play. I think the issue for this group is they just couldn't get a lot of stops this week. That said, Indiana is a really good offense, Drew. They've got a great quarterback. They're good in the red zone, and they're pretty strong defensively. Last week's number was 13.5 for Indiana, and Maryland's a 10-point favorite. That seemed a little high to me. I actually like Northwestern here. There are some 10.5 and 11s out there. I think Northwestern can hang in this game. The change at quarterback has made them a better offense. I still think they're definitely the better defense in this game. And I don't know that Maryland's very good on the defensive end. So to me, I didn't necessarily see 10 points between these teams. I think Northwestern can hang a little bit here. Maybe I could see a 30-23 type of game, 30-21. I like the 11 here with Northwestern.
Next one up on Friday, UNLV and Utah State. Remember you talking about the UNLV-Syracuse game, Jeff. You kind of had that one locked in, man. Tip of the cap to you. Minus 19, that being UNLV as the road favorite. 65 in the hook being the total. 9 o'clock Eastern kick time in this one.
Yeah, it seemed like it was just a great spot for Syracuse in that game. UNLV coming off that real big win, emotional win. I didn't think their defense was as good as it showed. But again, you had an extra day. Well, actually, you don't have an extra day, but you have a week off. You kind of picked up the pieces, and a great tonic through a loss is facing Utah State. I mean, this team is dreadful. I think maybe getting out of UNLV, out of Vegas, was a good idea. And look, you kind of got bogged down in that game. You were having to play a team that threw the ball 63 times, kind of turned into a bit of a shootout. I think the goal with UNLV, though, is they want to lean on the run, Drew. And I don't think there was much wrong with their offense. They just couldn't get any stops defensively. This is a significantly weaker offense. This is a Utah State team that has one of the worst rushing defenses in the country. I would expect UNLV to get back to the ground game this week and really focus on running the football down the throat of the Aggies. As I said, Boise State did it. They're going to do it. UNLV 8th in the country in rushing yards per game. I would imagine they'll be up in the 6.5, 7 yards a rush here. I would get back at grinding it out on the ground. I would look towards laying the number here. I think they win like 44-17, something like that. I think this is a good bounce back spot for the Rebels.
All right, Jeff, we got the nightcap here Friday, 119, 120, 10:30 Eastern kick. We are heading to Tempe, Arizona, Utah, and Arizona State. The Utes, -6 in the hook at some shops as the road favorite, 45 being the total. Utah, they look good at times, but sometimes they laid an egg, especially against Arizona. Now they're up against the Sun Devils here. You liking anything in Tempe, Arizona, late night, Friday night lights?
Yeah, so I read an article from I read a lot of like local news, like sports, to kind of get some kind of editorial info on stuff. And there was a great article on KSL.com, which I believe is out of Salt Lake City. And the title was a sports section title, Never Ending Saga with Cam Rising Growing Stale. And it is. I'm tired of this. We'll see. And then we don't know if he's ever playing or not. I've decided, Drew, at this point, I'm done with their games. I'm no longer betting on or against Utah. I just think we've seen this time and time again. And when they report that he's going to play, that he doesn't play. It's truly a never-ending saga. It's kind of a broken record. I'm kind of tired of it. This is a pretty good Arizona State team. Again, college football is all about foreshadowing and what you think is going to happen. But with Cam Rising, you never truly know. He could be out warming up and then you don't see him. So I'm done with these games. I'm not involved. I just kind of skip over them at this point. I don't really want to back backups here. So, yeah, I'm out. I'm not interested.
I don't disagree with you at all. I'm with you, man. And you brought up a point of local kind of news, I guess just news in general, reading a lot that way. Man, I've known you for like almost a decade now. We've both been in this industry pretty much as our straight jobs since then. I've noticed that we've gotten like the mainstream, whatever you want to call it, national media. It's harder to find kind of good betting on points in that category, like the national stuff. You got to go to the local stuff, these college newspapers, things of that. Do you agree with that? Is that how you're finding it?
Yeah, I mean, I think people will laugh, but like I use like a lot of, I think what's made me pretty good at doing this stuff is like I've melded it with like the crime stuff I do. I research, I do a lot of deep research. And like when I do a biography on like a mobster, I'm looking into ancestry records, like I'm looking into all sorts of things. So I've become a pretty good investigative person. Look, I've delved into fan forums. Like I've looked into like, all sorts of stuff. And look, as it gets harder, like in college basketball, you're dealing with like where to find information on Southeast Missouri State. So it's like, you got to go to some of the heartbeats of some of these fan forums and stuff. And yeah, it's hard. I will say, I mean, a lot of the time, unless it's like a quarterback, I mean, it's not a huge, I think, real difference in the spread or spread itself or anything. But yeah, with Cam Rising, I'm just kind of out. I'm done with the charades. I will say the number indicates to me that he's playing, but who the hell knows?
Yeah, I guess if they win the Big 12 conference, they'd make the playoffs anyway. So that's what they're kind of probably aiming for. But after that loss, you probably got to, I don't know how many more you could lose and still get yourself in.
Yeah, and That's, I think, a better maybe conference than we think. There's some really solid teams there. Obviously, Colorado's playing a lot better. There are some other Arizona's played well. They just beat them. Keep in mind, Utah off a bye. So I think if there is a time for Cam Rising to come back, it's probably this week, but who knows?
Yeah. All right, guys, flipping the script here to Saturday, October 12th. We got Jeff Nadeau at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter, the Sit Down Podcast, part of the Every Game on the Board leadoff hitter here. So top of the card, we'll hit the first few at the top, then bring in mid-major Matt and Rob Vino to finish off the Saturday card. 1-2-1, 1-2-2 here. It is 2 o'clock Eastern Michigan and Miami of Ohio. We are seeing Miami O -2 or -2 in the hook as the road favorite, 46.5 being the total on the gray turf here, Jeff.
Yeah, it's been a rough season for Chuck Martin and Miami of Ohio. I really don't know what to make of them. I thought coming into the season, Gabbert was back healthy. I thought on paper they had a strong defense as usual. They're always well coached. They're kind of a blue collar. They play a lot of 20 to 17 type of games. Look, the schedule was tough. I mean, they had to go play Northwestern, a Big Ten team, Cincinnati, a Big 12 team, Notre Dame, who's a top 10 team, arguably. Played Toledo, who's always a really good team in the MAC and the favorite. But what was the excuse against UMass? I mean, you win by 3 in overtime. I'm just kind of at the point where I don't know how good they are. I don't think they're very good, quite frankly. EMU over the years has been a group that you don't want to lay points with, but getting points with EMU has been a very good betting strategy. They have been an elite underdog over the years. And obviously you want to look long-term at kind of where they are over the last 5 years. But I believe Chris Creighton, their coach, is towards the high mark of against the spread as an underdog. I'll get it here in a second, and I'll tell you. But I think they've covered 4 or 5 as a dog. And overall, they've been very good in that role. So I would probably, here we go. Since the start of 2017, they're 34-17 as a dog. So that's one of the higher marks in the country. It's been the same group of guys as far as coaches there. And since 2020, they're 19-11 as a dog. So over the last 4-ish years, they've been quite good in this role. So, and throw in the fact that you're playing a team that hasn't been very good and hasn't been good laying points. They're getting a home game here too. I lean EMU. If you can find a 3, which I don't know if you can at this point, seems like sharps have grabbed the 3s and they're long gone.
Like that. Good trends there towards the dog, guys, as we got Iowa State and West Virginia in a Big 12 battle here. -3. It was bought up from -2 and a hook. That is the Cyclones as the road favorite. 53 being the total. Ames to Morgantown. Not an easy trip here. Laying 3, Jeff.
No, it isn't an easy trip. I don't know how many people have ever been to the great state of West Virginia. I have. I drove through there to go to Rough and Rowdy in 2021. And when I tell you that is a rough, that's a tough place to fly into. Morgantown Airport's small. You then got a bus to the stadium. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So not an easy trip. You're right about that. That said, this is turning into a little bit of a too much of a public dog. I've seen a lot of people mention how much they love Westphal here. I get it. But then I say to myself, well, what have they really done? I mean, their one step-up game against Penn State, they were embarrassed. I mean, there was a better spot to be in. I don't know what would have been. They got kind of beat up against Pitt, who's a very good offense. They can't really stop anybody, and they haven't faced a defense this good outside of Penn State, and they didn't play well in that game. So I don't know. Iowa State's good. I think they have a great defense. I think Rocco Beck's a lot better than people think. They're not giving him really the credit he deserves. If I can grab a 2.5, I'd probably almost lay it. This has become too much of a public dog, and you're not really getting a premium here. Like if you're getting 7.5, then fine, but you're not.
All good points there, Jeff. As we got Marshall, Georgia Southern up next. Thundering Herd -1 in the hook as the short road favorite. 61 and a hook being the total in Statesboro, Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, over the last 3-4 years, the Georgia Southern, Georgia State teams have been pretty bad defenses, man. I will say I like Charles Huff. I think he's a good coach. Marshall's played a tough schedule. look, what they did last week to App State was really impressive, man. They had a ton of rushing yards in that game, turned them over a couple of times. App State's been disappointing, man. Real disappointing team there. I didn't have much in this game. I don't bet a ton of this conference really kind of at these levels. These are kind of the mid to poor teams in this conference. Sometimes they get these games. That's the Every Game on the Board podcast. I don't have much on it.
Jeff, we got Cal and Pitt up next. We got to bring up Berkeley last Saturday, man. What a scene they had for college game day, and then the late night action. That was a pretty good scene there in Berkeley. Of course, a wild finish, and it didn't go in Cal's favor. Some questionable calls there. Now they're going on the road to Pittsburgh here. -3. That's the Panthers. There is 3.5 out there as well. 58 in the hook being the total in an ACC matchup.
Yeah, this is one that I felt that, look, I thought Cal would struggle last week defensively. They had not faced a good passing offense, and they got shredded. Another one here, throw in the fact you're off a brutal loss, and you got to go on the road to Pittsburgh, who is another really good passing offense. Drew, I have some numbers here. Pitt is they play really fast, 24th in the country in plays per game. They could throw the ball. I believe top 10 in passing offense, 46 points a game, 5-0 against the number. They have just been money in this spread range, quite honestly. They also, Cal, don't really get to the quarterback. I think Eli Holston's going to have a lot of time to throw the football. Pitt's a pretty good defensive line. I think if it's at 3 or under, I'm leaning towards the Panthers here. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, there is 3 still out there, guys, but it does look like it's moving to 3 and a hook at a lot of shops. As we'll move down to the SEC here, we get Vanderbilt and Kentucky. Vandy off the big win over Alabama. You already talked about New Mexico State, Jeff, at the top of the show. Well, a lot of those New Mexico State players on Vanderbilt, including the quarterback Pavia, the old offensive coordinator as well. 46 being the total here. -13 in the hook. That is Kentucky is the home favorite. They've taken money throughout the week as we're talking here on Wednesday. But, yeah, we're heading to Lexington. Vandy, tough spot for them off the huge win.
Yeah, it is a tough spot. But, I got to tell, I mean, they've been pretty good as a dog. I mean, they almost beat Mizzou and beat Alabama as a 20-point dog. So I don't really know why they continue to get, a bunch of points. Kentucky's not exactly a great offense. This is a tough defense, though, and I think that's kind of the issue I have here. It might be a bit high, but if I bet it, I got to get 14 or 14.5, and I don't think I'm going to get there. I think if you like Vandy, you lean over the total. If you like Kentucky, you probably lean under. Something tells me this is 24-17 or something. I think Vandy probably covers. I don't know. I'm out on this one. I'm kind of all over the place with it.
Yeah, it is a tough one. We got Syracuse and NC State up next, staying in the ACC here. We are seeing Syracuse, the orange, -5-point road favorites, 54 being the total. Shout out to Jeff here, guys. He nailed the Qs as his best bet on last week's show. Laying 5 here on the highway here, Jeff, after going, to Las Vegas, now going on the road again, back-to-back road games. Are you liking anything Syracuse and NC State?
Yeah, Syracuse top 10 in the country, 72 plays of 10 yards or more. They have a bunch of long passing plays. They're also one of the better passing offenses in the country. Kyle McCord second in passing yards, only behind Cameron Ward at Miami. NC State, I mean, can we disagree they're not good? I mean, they've gotten beat up time and time again. Syracuse has scored 31 or more points in 4 or 5 games this season. They also play fast, 11th in plays per game. I think it's going to be on the front foot all year, all game in this one. I played their team total over Syracuse. I believe it's 30.5. I'm on the over 30.5 Syracuse.
Nice stats there, Jeff, offensively for Qs. We got 1 game left. We'll get a best bet from Jeff as well. Guys, let us know you're watching. I'm seeing over 500 live viewers here. We are going live on YouTube and Twitter. Every game on the board, wherever you're downloading your podcast at. Remember to subscribe, like the podcast as well. Every game on the board. Missouri and UMass to end episode 1 here of week 7, Jeff. We get Missouri, huge road favorites, near 4 touchdowns, -27 in the hook, 54.5 being the total. Missouri at UMass.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mizzou we can look back to Mizzou playing bad teams to start the season. And I think that's probably where this game is. Mizzou's had a rough stretch. I mean, BC's tough. Vanderbilt's obviously tough and A&M's tough. That said, they haven't played well, but this is a good kind of tonic to fixing that. Kind of a weird game. Why is Missouri playing UMass in UMass? I don't understand this one. I guess it's a bye game. I think the embarrassments, though, have come and gone for Missouri. I'd expect a major bounce back here. We know they have plenty of playmakers. It's time for them to put together a 45-0 win or something. Like they need a big win by margin. No questions asked, no issues. I think they get it here. UMass is bad. They're slightly better than they usually are, but they're usually horrible. So yeah, I would probably lay it, but it's not a game that'll make my card.
He's Jeff Nadeau at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter. Jeff, do we get a best bet for you? One more confident than the others?
Yeah, you mentioned that canceled game between Memphis and South Florida. I bet the over here, 59. I believe it's up to 61. But again, I think this is first of 40 wins, Drew. I talk all the time about kind of these games that kind of have everything you want when you're backing an over. Last year, these two teams played to a 59-50 shootout in regulation. Didn't go to overtime. There were also no defensive touchdowns in that game. The offenses were just back and forth. I look at Memphis. Offense is always good. They always throw the ball at a high level. This is South Florida defense has gotten beaten up. They have one of the worst passing defense in the country. And Memphis is going to throw. We also look at both these teams. They play fast. South Florida, I think, gets back to the run this week. Memphis got destroyed on the ground against Navy. Gave up almost 400 yards on the ground in that game. Both are pretty good in the red zone. Memphis is particularly good in the red zone. I think it's back and forth. I was going to say Friday night fireworks. I think it's Saturday afternoon fireworks. I think this one's back and forth.
Great breakdown there. Best bet on the over. Memphis and USF over 60 in the hook is out there, guys. There is 61s, but we'll give you 60.5 here, Jeff, for the best bet. Guys, check out his podcast, the Sit Down Podcast, talking all things mob, Mexican cartel as well. It's very interesting. He's a great follow on Twitter at Jeff Nadeau. Jeff, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
I will say my show this week is the most personal show I've ever done. I was very vulnerable, Drew, in this episode. I talked about, did the mob actually send me to a mental institution? You might want to listen to this one. It was a good one.
I can't wait for that. All right.
It's all about, dealing with loss and stress in your life and some of the things that I've dealt with. So check it out. It's a little different than normal, but I'm getting good reviews on it.
So it's out there now. It's up and available.
Yes, it's on iTunes, Spotify. Just search the Sit Down with Jeff Nadeau and you'll find it.
All right, guys, that's it. At Jeff Nadeau on Twitter, the Sit Down Podcast. We'll be back next week for episode 1. We got episode 2 and 3 for week 7 coming up today and tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Every Game on the Board podcast. We'll be back soon. Until then, cash those tickets.